October 7th, 1571, the Mediterranean Sea holds its breath as two massive fleets converge near the Greek coast. For centuries, these waters have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, but nothing approaches the scale of what is about to unfold. Christian Europe faces its greatest maritime challenge against the expanding Ottoman Empire in what will become the largest naval battle in human history. The ghosts of ancient naval battles haunt these waters where Greek triremes once clashed with Persian vessels. Now, 16 centuries later, the Mediterranean has become the crucial battleground between two competing civilizations. The stakes could not be higher. Control of these sea lanes means dominance over European trade routes, and the fate of Christendom itself hangs in the balance. The Holy League's fleet of 206 galleys carries the hopes of Pope Pius IV, Philip II of Spain, and the maritime republics of Venice and Genoa. Facing them across these contested waters lies Muezzin-Zadeh Ali Pasha's Ottoman armada of 251 vessels. Both commanders understand that defeat means more than military loss. It could reshape the religious and political landscape of Europe forever. Cyprus had fallen to Ottoman forces just 1 year earlier, sending shockwaves throughout Christian Europe. The brutal siege of Famagusta, where Venetian commander Marcantonio Bragadin was flayed alive after surrendering under terms of safe passage, demonstrated the ruthless efficiency of Ottoman expansion. Venice's maritime empire, built over centuries of Mediterranean dominance, faced extinction as Turkish fleets controlled ever more of these ancient trade routes. Pope Pius V had proclaimed this sacred war against Islam, promising plenary indulgences to all who fought. The Holy League represented Christianity's last desperate attempt to halt Ottoman naval supremacy that had grown unchecked since the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Spanish gold, Venetian shipbuilding expertise, and Genoese maritime knowledge combined to create a fleet capable of challenging Turkish dominance in the Mediterranean's eastern waters. Don Juan of Austria, illegitimate son of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, commanded the Christian fleet at just 24 years old. His appointment had surprised many veteran admirals, but his royal blood and proven courage in Granada's rebellion made him an acceptable compromise between competing national interests. The young commander understood that victory required perfect coordination between fleets that had rarely fought together before this crucial moment. Muezzin Zaid Ali Pasha commanded the largest Ottoman fleet ever assembled, drawing vessels from Constantinople, Alexandria, and Algiers. His ships carried elite Janissary troops and experienced corsairs who had terrorized Christian shipping for decades. The Ottoman admiral had explicit orders from Sultan Selim II to destroy the Holy League completely, securing Turkish dominance over Mediterranean trade routes and opening the path for future expansion into Italy itself. Intelligence networks across the Mediterranean had tracked both fleets' movements for weeks. Venetian spies in Constantinople reported the Ottoman fleet's strength, while Turkish agents in Venice and Naples counted Christian vessels preparing for battle. Both sides understood that this engagement would determine whether Europe's southern flank remained vulnerable to Islamic expansion, or if Christian naval power could halt the Ottoman tide permanently. October 7th dawned calm and clear as both fleets maneuvered for position near Lepanto. The Christian fleet formed a traditional battle line with Andrea Doria commanding the right wing, Don Juan the center, and Agostino Barbarigo the left. Their 206 galleys carried approximately 84,000 men, including 20,000 Spanish and Italian soldiers trained specifically for galley warfare against Ottoman boarding tactics. The Ottoman fleet approached in crescent formation, a tactic that had brought victory in countless previous engagements. Ali Pasha's center squadron faced Don Juan directly, while Uluç commanded the right wing and Mehmed Sirocco the left. Their 251 vessels carried nearly 88,000 men, including elite janissaries whose muskets and scimitars had conquered Christian fortresses from Hungary to North Africa. Both fleets possessed secret weapons that could determine the battle's outcome. The Christians deployed 6 massive galleasses, heavily armed floating fortresses that could devastate enemy formations with their cannon batteries. The Ottomans relied on their superior numbers and the legendary fighting prowess of their Janissary corps, warriors who had never known defeat in close combat aboard Mediterranean galleys. The wind died completely as both fleets closed to combat range, leaving the battle dependent entirely on oar power and seamanship. Christian galley slaves, many of them captured Muslims, now fought for their potential freedom, while Ottoman rowers, freemen, and conscripts alike pulled toward what their commanders promised would be Islam's greatest maritime victory against the infidel Europeans. The galleasses opened fire first, their heavy cannon ripping through Ottoman formations that had never faced such concentrated artillery at sea. Turkish galleys, built for speed and ramming attacks, proved vulnerable to the devastating broadsides that shattered oars and killed rowers by the dozens. The Christian fleet's technological advantage became immediately apparent as Ottoman vessels struggled to close with their traditional boarding tactics. The Ottoman left wing struck first, Mehmed Sirocco's galleys ramming into Barbarigo's Venetian squadron with tremendous force. Hand-to-hand combat erupted across dozens of vessels as Janissaries and Venetian marines fought desperately for control of individual ships. The confined space of galley decks meant that victory depended on superior swordsmanship, courage, and the willingness to die for one's faith. Ali Pasha's flagship Sultana closed with Don Juan's reel in the battle's climactic moment, the two commanders engaging in personal combat that would determine their fleet's fate. The Ottoman admiral fought with desperate courage, knowing that defeat meant not only military disaster, but also the end of Turkish naval supremacy in the eastern Mediterranean. Christian marines slowly gained the upper hand through superior armor and disciplined formations. Ulugh Ali's Algerian corsairs attempted a flanking maneuver against Doria's Genoese squadron, hoping to recreate the tactics that had brought Ottoman victory at Preveza 34 years earlier. However, the Christians had learned from previous defeats, maintaining tighter formations that prevented the traditional Turkish tactic of surrounding and isolating individual enemy vessels. The battle's outcome now hung on which fleet could maintain discipline longer. Ali Pasha fell defending his flagship as Christian marines overwhelmed the Sultana's remaining defenders. His death sent shockwaves through the Ottoman fleet as the sacred banner of the Prophet Muhammad was captured and displayed aboard Don Juan's galley. Turkish morale collapsed as word spread that their admiral had died and their holiest battle standard had fallen into infidel hands forever. The Ottoman center disintegrated as leaderless galleys attempted to flee toward the safety of Lepanto's harbor. Christian galleys pursued relentlessly, their crews intoxicated by the first major naval victory over the Turks in living memory. Thousands of Ottoman sailors drowned as their vessels foundered in the increasingly rough seas, while others were captured and enslaved by their Christian enemies. Only Ulugh Ali's squadron managed an organized retreat, saving 35 galleys from complete destruction, while the rest of the Ottoman fleet was captured or sunk. The Algerian corsair's skill as a naval commander preserved the nucleus of future Turkish naval power, though it would take years to rebuild the massive fleet that had dominated Mediterranean waters since the early 16th century. The Battle of Lepanto ended with Ottoman naval supremacy shattered permanently. Over 30,000 Turkish sailors and soldiers lay dead, while the Holy League had lost only 7,500 men in the most decisive naval engagement since Actium. The Christian fleet had captured 117 Ottoman galleys, while sinking or destroying 50 others, fundamentally altering the Mediterranean's balance of power forever. News of the victory reached Rome on October 21st, where Pope Pius V immediately credited the triumph to divine intervention and the intercession of the Virgin Mary. Church bells rang throughout Christian Europe as populations that had lived in fear of Ottoman expansion celebrated their deliverance. The victory reinvigorated Catholic confidence during the Counter-Reformation and demonstrated that Turkish military supremacy was not invincible. Despite the stunning victory, the Holy League failed to exploit their advantage effectively. Political disagreements between Spain, Venice, and the Papal States prevented follow-up campaigns that might have driven the Ottomans from the Eastern Mediterranean entirely. Within 2 years, the Turkish fleet had been rebuilt and resumed its attacks on Christian shipping, though it never again achieved the overwhelming superiority of earlier decades. The battle's most famous participant, Miguel de Cervantes, lost the use of his left arm while fighting aboard a Spanish galley. The future author of Don Quixote always considered his participation at Lepanto the proudest moment of his life, calling it the most noble and memorable event that past centuries have seen or future ones may hope to see. His wounds became badges of honor in a Europe hungry for heroes. Today, these waters appear peaceful, giving no hint of the 40,000 souls lost in history's last great galley battle. The Battle of Lepanto marked the end of an era when wooden ships powered by human muscle determined the fate of empires. Though Ottoman power would continue for centuries, never again would Turkish fleets threaten to transform the Mediterranean into an Islamic lake.